Very good evening to all of you. On behalf of Committee for Members in Practice of Institute of Chartered Accountant of India, I welcome you all in this today's webinar on Shared Service Center, driving towards India's way forward. As we all are aware, we are all celebrating Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav, that is 75 years of India's independence. So we have, at the level of institute, have planned so many activities under the Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav. So under this aegis, Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav, today we are organizing this webinar under the name of Share Service Center Driving India's Way Forward. In order to share with all of us the contribution of Atmanirbhar Bharat, employment, technology and economy, we are having four eminent speakers: CA Abhishek Gupta ji, CA Sarvesh Mathur ji, CA Sushil Kedia ji, CA Sumant Chadha ji. I welcome you all, sir. Welcome, sir. So before I start all the technical sessions and invite Sumant Chadha ji to take the proceedings of this panel discussion as well as apprise all of us on the various contributions, it is my proud privilege to share with you the brief profile of all the eminent speakers with all of you. CA Abhishek Gupta ji is the co-founder of Parian Global Services LLC and has set up the assurance and advisory practice. Abhishek ji is a transformation champion with almost 2 decades of the experience in the global assurance audits and accounting services. He is a leading expert in the offshoring industry with a wealth of knowledge and consumer insight of serving global clients. Abhishek's last assignment was E&Y for the 10 years, wherein he was a part of the core EY leadership team, wherein he led the offshore assurance commercial practice for EY North America, the biggest practice arm of EY Global. He pioneered it to develop the business and set up a high-performing team of 1,500 professionals. During his stint with E&Y, he incubated, started, and successfully led multiple business solutions and center of excellence, technical accounting, US GAAP, IFRS, private client services, go-to-market pursuits, business insight, margin and quality improvement. Abhishek carries a diversified experience as he has worked as a finance controller with Textmarks Holdings, holding a $230 billion fund of Singapore government. He has also worked with PwC for 5 years in assurance practice and successfully led audits for Fortune 100 companies. He is a chartered accountant from India with 20 years of experience, passionate for education, skills, and technology advancement. He sits on advisory boards of various prestigious institutes covering 10,000 students. Welcome to you, Abhishek ji. We are having CA Sarvesh Mathur ji with us. Sarvesh ji has joined E&Y in September 1997. He has worked in Muscat, Oman from 1997 till April 2003. He has a specialization in oil and gas and construction industry. He has joined E&Y San Jose, California, USA in May 2003 and worked there till December 2011, including secondment of 3 years of GDS India. His specialization in technology industry part of GDS Assurance India since 2012, born and brought up in Delhi and did graduation from Hansraj College. He is a chartered accountant since 1996, certified public accountant CPA 2000, certified internal auditor CIA 2002, and certified information system auditor CISA from 2003. Welcome you, Sarvesh ji. If we read out his achievements, a list is long. He has served public service, SEC, registrants, and private companies ranging from development stage companies to large multinational technology clients, led the IPO for technology clients, set up the American commercial practice in GDS Gurgaon, participated in multiple Channel 1 pursuits for the US practice and demonstrating the service delivery model, which includes both US and India audit professionals, participated in various quality initiatives for the assurance practice, including performing AQRs. Welcome, sir. We are having another eminent personality from Chartered Accountant Fraternity, CA Sushil Kedia ji with us. Sushil ji brings together technology, data, business auditing and accounting expertise through his 20 years of post-qualification experience in providing statutory audit, internal audit, IT system audit, data analysis, ERP security, information security, data privacy, and business process control, optimization services to a multitude of clients, which include large Indian listed companies and MNCs. Apart from India, he has led different types of engagements in several other countries, including US and UK. He leads the stakeholder and digital trust services for the firm and helps his clients on audit attestation under various global standards and framework where the subject matter involves information security, data privacy, etc. He is also subject matter expert on ERP risk and control and has led several large-scale SAP pre and post-implementation audit in India and abroad. He has been responsible for leveraging IT tools and technology as part of the statutory audits for some of the largest companies in India. He has played a leading role in developing audit methodology and approach for auditing clients, IT system and process as part of those statutory audits. He has helped many clients in automating business process and internal control, implementing internal control framework and advise on internal financial control to meet the requirements of the Companies Act 2013, as well as US SOX 404 requirements. He is actively involved in thought leadership and innovation in external and internal audit to make emerging technologies like robotic process automation and artificial intelligence as part of the audit process. In addition to being a proud Indian chartered accountant, Sushil is also a ICAI UK chartered accountant. His professional certification includes Certified Information System Audit CISA, Certified Information Privacy Professional CIPP US, Certified Data Privacy Solution Engineer CDPSC ISO 27001, lead auditor and SAP business objects access control and process control. He has also been an executive development programs of leading B schools like Indian School of Business, ISB, and Wharton School. Welcome you, sir. We are having another respected speaker, C.S. Suman Chaddaji. Suman Chaddaji is with us. C.S. Suman Chaddaji is an alumnus of the Shri Ram College of Commerce, Delhi University, and an awardee of Ronak Education Foundation Gold Medal for securing first rank in CA in North India and second rank in All India. He is also a law graduate. He is working as a senior partner with firm Messrs. T.R. Chadda and Company LLP since July 1984 and heading the risk and advisory practice of the firm with a workforce of around 300 employees in the vertical. He is a past president of the Institute of Internal Auditors IIA India, which is affiliated to IIA USA and also its Delhi chapter. He was a special invitee to the National Advisory Committee of Accounting Standards (NACAS) for the implementing Ind AS in India and to the Internal Audit Standard Board IASB of Institute of Chartered Accountants of India. He is an active member of the Committee for Members in Practice. He has been a managing committee of PhD Chamber of Commerce and also served on many boards as an independent director. He is a speaker and faculty at various seminars organized under the aegis of different professional bodies. He is co-author of 2 books on corporate laws also. I welcome you, sir, on behalf of Committee for Members in Practice of ICAI. So we are having a panel of 4 eminent speakers with us. So in order to start discuss the contribution on various aspects, I request C.S. Suman Chaddaji to please start the deliberation and request all the speakers to deliberate on the various topics. Suman sir, please.
Thank you, Anilji, for the kind words, and good afternoon to everybody. And a special thanks to the team at CMP and my colleagues with me today on this webinar to have joined and taken out their time. Actually, when I was doing a little research on this and was thinking what to start with, I was confronted with 2 very interesting situations. And the first one is like this. The second one I'll narrate a little later. When I was looking at what actually do we understand from shared services center, I checked up Wikipedia because that's a go-to Britannica now these days. And its definition reads as follows. I'm going to quote, a shared service center is the entity responsible for the execution and the handling of specific operation tasks such as accounting, human resources, payroll, IT, legal compliance, purchasing, securities, etc. The shared service center is often a spin-off of the corporate service to separate all operational type of tasks from the corporate headquarters, which has to focus on leadership, corporate governance, and strategy. Shared service centers are often cost centers and were deployed for a variety of reasons. One, primarily to reduce costs of decentralization, to increase the quality and the professionalism of support services for their business, and to increase the cost flexibility for supporting services, and to create a higher degree of strategic flexibility. But the primary driver was reduction in cost, which probably ranged even up to 50 to 70%. But when this was started, and now what we have, what this whole operations are about, when we look at today's shared service centers, they are no longer just a repository for reference to IT or operational functions. In fact, they have moved from cost arbitrage to being a core part of the organizational strategy and objectives, and have actually been evolved into global capability centers, as they are popularly now known as GCCs. Today, GCCs not only drive process and productivity improvement for global corporations, but they also create new capabilities, lead cross-functional efforts, and bring new product and services offering to the market based on innovation born on these centers. Actually, in addition to evolving business models, I feel GCCs have also built a greater breadth and depth of services. One, they lead global vendor management, develop global sourcing strategies, have their own products and platforms to work on. And this sector has the opportunity to reinvigorate itself by disrupting traditional thinking in areas such as leadership, talent development, and governance. So look at the shift which has happened, which is the Wikipedia definition today, which is still there on the books. But what actually it has evolved to, it's actually mind-blowing. And this comes to the second part of my thought process, which immediately brings a critical thought in my mind as to how much each one of our lives have actually been changed by this shared services or GCCs, etc. But we are not aware of it in that measure. Once we get into, and today on the deliberations, we have such eminent, knowledge pool with us who will be able to elaborate, and especially for chartered accountants who qualify from the institute, look at the opportunity and how each one of us, our lives are affected by this. It is something very interesting and a very knowledgeable journey. And I'm grateful to the CPM to have actually given us an opportunity to actually deep dive into this, so that we are able to not only understand the depth and breadth, as I mentioned, but also the opportunity which is opening up in the next 10, 5, 20, 50 years. I really don't know where we are heading on this front, but this is actually a game changer in our lives. In terms of a recent NASSCOM Deloitte analysis, while India has actually contributed significantly towards the growth of the global organizations with global capability centers, GCCs in short, leveraging quality talent and capabilities in India, actually GCCs have also contributed significantly in return. India has become home to capability centers of over 1,300 global organizations, and they directly employ 1.3 plus billion people, generating approximately US dollars 33.8 billion in revenue for financial year 2020, and creating a strong ripple effect in the Indian economy across everywhere. As I already mentioned, the first wave of GCC was primarily driven to provide the wage and cost arbitrage benefit to the global organizations. But today, this sector has provided value beyond anything anticipated and provided indirect employment to more than 5.5 million people, aiding in creating world-class infrastructure in their communities and in providing better quality of life to their employees and associates, which we can all see. As India tries to digitize itself, GCC has significantly helped in developing the high-quality talent pool to meet the demand for the digital growth engine of the economy. So what a significant step they have taken, and given the support and the fill-up is actually mind-blowing. And also as a significant challenge to bring global best practices in India, It also supports India's underprivileged through the NGOs they have set up, enhance India's reputation as a global tech major, which is, something recognized and something to be very proud of, through creation of world leaders, as well as to provide the talent pipeline for India's startup, which is actually blooming and blossoming with no end. And what do I see further? I see during 2015 to 2020, the employment has grown nearly 75%. The global MNCs have gone from 1,000 to 1,300, which is more than a 20% growth. And the annual revenue has actually had from a 20 billion jump to 33.8 billion, which is a CAGR of more than 11% and running. Giving an overview of how GCC or shared services has impacted the entire fabric of the economy, we could break up, and as per the analysis of this report and the NASSCOM Deloitte analysis, one is, of course, is the economy, which I'm talking about, and it has both actually a triple effect: direct, indirect, and induced impact, which I'm going to briefly touch upon. And then, of course, human capital, which I have an very eminent leader going to be talking about, how the impact on employees' professional growth, leadership pipeline for the nation, and equal opportunity at work, and especially for chartered accountants, which matter to us the most. Innovation and ecosystem, that has completely been changed in a very silent but a very significant way for all of us. Deployment of sunrise technologies, use of case that enable cross-border development, and creation of ecosystems of talent, startups, and corporates that lead to innovation. That's all bubbling across all these centers. Social impact in communities, which was never thought of earlier, through the funding allocation and volunteering for social initiatives, and a helping hand to make NGOs and their programs more effective. They've really done a salutary job. Environmental, global sustainability, that's how we are able to imbibe it so easily in the Indian corporate, leading to a better environment, sustainability outlook for the nation. Every nation worldwide worth its salt is actually making this as its topmost priority. We have to save the world. If we have to save the future, we have to manage the environment. And lastly, the reputation of India, showcasing as a suitable for skill arbitrage, is actually a very good feather in the cap. When Indians go, now we are recognized globally much more effectively and much more significantly than probably what it was there probably a decade or maybe a two ago. How has it affected the direct impact on the economy? Gross value addition, we are looking at employment generation, corporate tax contribution, personal taxation, forex contribution. It is highly lucrative. Every aspect of our economy is affected. For example, we're looking at corporate tax contribution of nearly 8,000 crores. Sorry, can you see me now? Yeah, there was a problem with the technology. And we are looking at more than 30,000 crores of personal income tax contribution, which is 5.5% of the personal income tax collection by India. Can you imagine 5% of the collection of income tax comes only from this sector? GCC, which most of us are never even exposed to, or even if we are exposed to very significantly less. The gross output, which is actually 1% of the GDP of India, 33 billion, only from the direct impact. From indirect, again 33 billion, and from the induced impact, again 33 billion. So we're looking at nearly a 3% impact on the GDP of the country and nearly 100 billion in revenue. Revenue, my friends, only come from the sales a GCC or a shared services makes to its parent organization or any other organization. Simply that, and that alone is nearly 33 billion and growing significantly. The forex contribution, again, accordingly, it's 7% of the total forex earnings in India. And the induced employment generation, what significance it carries for us is also mind-blowing. When I delved into this report, I realized it affects employment for kirana stores, for hospitals, for petrol pumps, and you name it, pumps, malls, domestic help. In fact, the report also has analyzed that GCC directly generates induced employment of nearly 1 million for full-time domestic cooks, cleaners, drivers, and nannies. Can you imagine that? Let's look at Bangalore, the Silicon Valley. Highly discretionary spend, demand for real estate, a high quality of life. It's changed the complexion. And that is being emulated in so many centers, right from Udaipur to Jaipur to Chandigarh to Mohali to not to mention Pune, Calcutta, Bombay, Hyderabad, Chennai, etc. Those are the given. The smaller towns, they are really being, this silent driver is really taking India to its echelons of progress. And we were not aware of it in that measure. How can it also work to our advantage in terms of real estate, capital markets? Now the rights are there where, these real estate companies are able to bundle them together and sell it to the capital market. There is the IT professionals, telecom professionals, professional chartered accountants, lawyers, consultants, valuers, all have their gambit of work and they are actually benefiting significantly. Travel, pre-COVID, sir, 1 billion spent on business travel through the parent organizations is not a small amount. Of course, probably it'll come back in some measure, but definitely, and probably it may take some time, but the impact has always been very significant. Therefore, my friends, it's becoming more and more important for us to bring its glory what it deserves and to discuss further as to how actually it is going to be impacting the other sectors like employment, affecting chartered accountants, etc. I'm going to throw open the discussion and the discussion forward, and I would request my colleagues to enlighten us as we go along the journey for today's webinar and a friendly fireside chat, if I may like to call it. So without much ado, let me invite my friend Sarvesh. And he is, I was going through his profile and it is astonishing, his experience from Muscat to San Jose. He could also share how sitting there, how they view India, what is from their eyesight, from their, perspective, how they felt through all this when we were setting this up. And now from this side, how we are providing that value add. But coming to what matters most for me as a chartered accountant. Sarvesh, tell us, how does you see this shared services industry impact my employment as a chartered accountant? What are the opportunities it brings me to the market and specifically to chartered accountants? Please help us and enlighten us, Sarvesh.
Thank you, Sumanji. I think you gave a really good overview of how this GCC is helping the Indian economy. And I know our Prime Minister, Mr. Modi, is in US this week, and he's meeting some of the big Indian leaders who are there, mostly in technology, to see how they can bring more investment to India. As you said in your introductory remarks, these days, it is not about cost arbitrage. Cost arbitrage is actually depleting. And we are seeing India is becoming a costly country because of real estate costs, because of the compensation which we all deserve. But at the same time, the talent which India produces and the academic records which India produces is outstanding. Nowhere in the world we can get so much of talent and so much of educated people with high standards of education system which we have in India. If we look at our own examination, the CA examination, this is one of the toughest examination in the world. I have passed CPA, and if somebody says, can you pass CPA again? Most likely I can pass CPA again. I passed CA. If somebody says, can you pass the CA exam again? I don't think so I can pass the CA exam again. Not even the first 4 papers of intermediate. Still, after 25 years of qualifying, I get a dream that I have not passed CA, and I wake up and says, there is no way I can give the CA exam again. So the amount of intelligence we have in India is only going to grow from here. And what I have seen in my professional career of 25 years plus, and obviously you have more experience than me, when I qualified as a chartered accountant, there was only 2 options available to us. You either continue in the profession. There was not even Big Four. They were Big Four at that time, but they were not as big as they are right now. There were firms like TR Chatta, which you lead, Mr. Sumant, and then all the AF Ferguson and other. You can continue to build your career over there and aspire to be a partner over there, or you move to industry where you become to the accounting department, the finance department, and get to the controller and CFO level. There was no third option to chartered accountant. If you look at now, I think people are still very keen to continue in the profession because you learn so much when in the profession. But the interest of moving towards industry and joining finance and accounting is actually reducing. People wants to join the global organization. They wants to learn more about what the global organizations are doing and what kind of advantages they have, what kind of technology advancement they have, so that they can learn much faster. The younger generation believes in learning much faster than our generation, which was doing day by day and which took us long time to reach where we are. But younger generation doesn't want to wait for 20 years to become a partner. They want to become a partner in 5 years. That is also not possible. But we know this new generation, and Abhishek is an expert in new generation. I'm sure he's going to cover in his deliberation as well. The new generation wants to learn things much more faster, and they want to grow their career much more faster. Shared services or GCC bring that opportunity to Indian population. Again, way back in 96, 97, there was hardly any shared services in India. But this all started in 2000 onwards, where most of the large organizations realized that for them to get the benefit of scale, they have to have their services centralized. And it's not just about finance function. It's about their R&D function. It is about their procurement function. It is about their business development function. It is each and every aspect of the organization. And they are looking at all different places. India is not the only one. Philippines is also one of the other large nation which is booming for the shared services. But from 2000 onwards, the big organizations started to think that how do we bring the centralization into our finance transformation? And some of the few one which comes to my mind is organization like HP, because I was in Silicon Valley and we used to do the audit of HP. HP started their big shared services in Bangalore. And I think right now they employ about 35 to 40,000 people to work on their global organization. It's huge employment opportunity. And as you said in your introductory remark, when we started this journey, this was all about shifting the low level work to cheaper location and get the cost arbitrage. So we started with that in 2000, but I think in this transformation from 2000 to 2010, we showed to the outside world that we can do much more than the basic work and basic functions. Then the organization started thinking that can we transfer some of the decision making to the shared service center? In those 10 years of 2000, the transactions were getting processed in the shared services, but the decision making was still with the corporate companies or the corporate headquarters. Just as an example, you may be doing all the transactions of AR processing, but when it comes to the review of the AR provision, that control and that function resides in your corporate headquarters. The corporate headquarters was not feeling comfortable that they can give that much level of autonomy or that much level of higher level work to these shared services. Partially because of the positioning of India at that point in time was not as great as we have seen in last 10 to 15 years. People used to think India is a third world country. There is a huge poverty over there. People are not as knowledgeable as they can be, and hence they thought that they should only give basic work to them. But I think a lot of work has been done by the government, by our Prime Minister Manmohan Singh and now with Prime Minister Modi, to position India differently in the world map, to show them that India is not a third world country. In fact, we have a lot of visitors who come from US and Europe to our office. And when they enter our office or when they enter Delhi or Gurgaon, their first remark is, we never thought that India has developed so much. We never thought that your office will be similar to my office in New York or France and Paris. But now that perception about India is changing, and that is changing the mindset of the corporate leadership. They are realizing they have to shift more higher level work to India. There is a skill available in India who can execute on these work, and you can have a complete leadership team sitting in India. We actually have a lot of large organizations who are talking to us and says, we want to transfer some of the leadership position to India. And we want to do it in a hybrid way. We want to hire some of the talent from India and give them those leadership positions. We also want to transfer some of the leaders from US and Europe to India for 2 years and then give them the opportunity to train the resources in India and then come back to their headquarters in US and Europe. And they are saying now there is so much of demand in the US leadership or Europe leadership that they're keen to actually go to India, live in India, experience India, and significantly develop their team in India and feel proud that they have created that team in India and then come back to their home country. And I'll tell you, this was my purpose of coming to India. When this opportunity was offered to me in 2008 in US, that will you go to India and set up the shared services for audit for E&Y? I was a little bit hesitant in the first place. After my qualification, I worked outside of India for approximately 12 years. The client is very different. The environment is very different. The culture is very different. But then I says, why don't I experiment? And if I am successful, I'll have a legacy to show that what I have created. And when I came to India, I came when the economy was slowing down. The Lehman Brothers actually happened on 8th September, and that is the date I actually signed my contract to come to India. So first 2-3 years journey was very slow and was not very enriching. And I was thinking, did I make a right choice to come to India? But I'll tell you, 2011 and 12, everything started to change. The global economy started to come back to its normalcy. We started to see more clients coming to us for more audit work, and we realized we don't have enough talented resources available in the Western world to do the work. And then I saw leaders coming to me and my counterpart to say, we want to actually do more work in India. And we started talking to them that we just don't want to do basic work. We will still do basic work. I know in my articleship days, I have done the casting and cross casting. I have taken the financial statement to the photocopier shop in Connaught Place and got 20 copies done. So we says, we know in this profession, particularly when it comes to accounting and auditing profession, you have to start with the basic. You have to start reading the financial statement and do the tick and tie. But we wanted to go much higher. We wanted to do much higher level work. And we made our statement very clear to our stakeholders that don't think GDS or the shared service center for EY just doing the basic work. Very soon, we want to do much higher level work. We want to learn about the US GAAP and all the regulatory requirement and do significant part of the audits by sitting in India. One other thing I will share, when I was in US in 2005 and 6, when all these shared services started, they all started with voice-based shared services. And the first experience I had was with the Dell shared services. I had a desktop at my home which was not working. I called the Dell service center and the call got connected to India. And at that point in time, there was an Indian talking to me, but he said he's sitting in Florida. But I could clearly make out that he was sitting in India and he was in the voice over back office of Dell in India. Eventually, he accepted that he's sitting in India, but he says, we have been told by Dell US that if we say that you are sitting in India, the people in US may not even want to talk to you. And at that point in time, I used to think, I am in such a safe profession that my job can never be given to anybody else. You have to be in front of your client. You have to be talking to the client, and I have 100% job security. But in 2008, when my leaders told us that with the shortage of resources we have and with the technology advancement, we are thinking of doing part of the audit in an offshore location, it was an eye-opener for me. And what I have seen in last 10 years in this business of offshoring of audit, it has completely transformed the way we are doing the audit. The client really likes it because the client is also doing the same transformation in their business. And they actually come to us and says, how are you transforming your business? How are you leveraging with the skill set which is available across the globe and not just the skill set which is available in your home office? How are you taking advantage of the time zone? A lot of time people talk about time zone as a challenge. My experience is time zone is a big advantage for us. We have a team sitting in US who's doing 8 to 10 hours of work. Then they talk to their counterparts in India, hand over that work to people in India, and we are working for the clients for 8 to 10 hours. So our clients are actually getting 20 hours of work getting done for them at the same fees which they are paying. So this is a huge advantage to our client. They are seeing audit getting completed much more faster because of the centers we have in different part of the world. And we are trying to be in locations where it makes sense. It is not just about India. We are in China, we are in Philippines, we are in Poland, we are thinking something in Latin America as well. So we are also thinking wherever the talent is available, we need to take the jobs to those places and not where the corporates are existing. When it comes to CA fraternity in India, there is huge opportunities in various different shared services centers or GCCs we have. And as I said, we do hire a lot of accounting graduates from various colleges. But at the same time, we need chartered accountant to do a higher level work. We call it as a senior or a manager or director level work. And we are always actively looking in the market. And the current situation is when we go to a recruitment team and says, we need 200 more chartered accountant, they always come back and say chartered accountant are becoming more and more less available in the market, particularly in the larger city where we have the presence. And you need to look at the alternatives. And we said, no, we don't want to look at alternatives. We still want to hire chartered accountant because we know the academic intelligence which they bring on the table. and they are a quick learning people, and they can bring much more value to our business as well as to our client. So there is immense opportunities available for chartered accountant in the Indian economy, and we have seen more and more people joining GCCs as well as the Big Four and Big Six in this environment. It is a big shift in the mindset of the people, because previously GCC or shared services was a taboo, and people used to think that if you work in these organizations, maybe you don't have the best job. But if you look at it right now, if you work in GCCs, whether it is EY, whether it is Accenture, TCS, Infosys, Genpact, they have huge reputation. They have huge branding in Indian market, and the compensation they pay, the experience they provide, the mobility they provide, they takes people to different part of the world so that you can learn the processes and bring back those processes. You learn so much when you go to your client location, and when you go to a country and you live there for 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, you get a very different perspective. All of that is only going to add to the economy of India. Sumanji talk about the compensation and direct taxes we are paying to the Indian economy. The compensation structure of many of these MNCs is also significantly better when you look at some of these domestic companies as well. Obviously, because these MNCs always look at the cost they have to pay to a similar resource in US versus hiring a similar resource in India. They're not paying us in US dollar, but they're paying us a comparable compensation because they want to hire the brightest and the smartest people. So you get paid well, you get really good experience, you get to work with the international leaders on various different things. You are involved in strategy, you get to the higher level. A lot of people are working at vice president, senior vice president. I got promoted to partner role in 2016, which didn't exist in EY at all in the shared services environment. When I moved, they says, we don't know whether somebody can be a partner in this environment. But with the growth story, we showed it to them. With the amount of work we showed that we can take over, they finally got convinced that they can be partners even in the shared service environment. So I personally feel that for all my member colleague in the CA or the students who are completing their examination, there is huge opportunities. We need to have an open mind that this industry can also take us to the highest level in the career, and we can contribute significantly to the economy. And in the current political and economic environment, I think we want India to be the leader. I know Prime Minister Modi talked about $5 trillion economy in 25 or 26, and I think we all can contribute to his vision and his ambitions.
Thank you, Sarvesh. That was actually very enlightening. And just to take you a cue from the dreams or nightmares you've been getting that you've not been able to clear your exams, I've been also getting similar dreams, but it's slightly different. Here I'm sitting for my final exam, and they suddenly come and say, Mr. Chadha, no, you have to go home because your inter is not yet cleared. So आप final के लिए कैसे आ गए हो यहाँ पे? So this is a normal nightmare which comes every 5 or 7 years and haunts me, if not with a quicker frequency.
It's the most toughest qualification we have got. Sometimes I always tell my friends and colleagues, sometimes it is easy to pass an IAS exam than a CA exam.
And yeah, absolutely correct. But taking a cue from there, the excitement which generates in today's world for the young chartered accountants and the opportunities they have, especially in shared services or GCC capability centers, what do you think would be the best advice to our members, our young brothers and sisters? What should be the best way to go, whether they should choose this against others? What should be their thought process going when they really want to get attached to this profession? What talent they need to nurture, and what are the sacrifices they may need to do, and any other advice you want to give to my members?
Yeah, I would say everybody has to make a personal choice for their careers. If you want to be a partner in a local practice serving local client, obviously you will have to join a local firm and you will have to pursue that career. But if you want to get an international exposure, if you want to work with multinationals and work with different cultures and different people, this is the right place to be in. And I know Sushil ji will talk more about it. One buzzword which is there right now in every profession is all about technology and data analytics. We have to make sure for the new members and students who are pursuing these chartered accountancy and coming out in the market, make sure you are upskilling yourself with new technology and analytic mindset, because a lot of work will get done through analytics. We used to do test of 25, test of 40. When I was in India, we used to review the journal ledger manually. All of that is going to be scrapped completely. in next few years, we are going to do an audit of each and every transaction. We are going to look at each and every transaction because we can extract the data from the client. We can do the real-time audit, and I'm sure in 3 or 4, 5 years from now, we can actually issue an audit opinion for a March year end on 1st April or 2nd April, because we can do 11 months audit end of February, we can do 20 days audit on end of 20th March, and then on 1st and 2nd April, we only look at what the company has done in last 10 days and actually issue the audit opinion so fast. So data analytics and technology is going to play a significant role in our profession. We were all doing paper-based audit or Excel-based audit, but that is all going to be history. So that will be my sincere advice to all the members, that upskill yourself with all the technology and analytics which is available. Large organization will give you that training themselves. But if you have the inclination alongside with your studies, alongside when you're a member, start to do some courses which will get you up to speed on analytics and automation. I'll give you one example. In my office, the next floor to my office was a large United US Airlines company. And I met with the head of that airlines company and says, what kind of work are you doing here? And they were not doing an accounting work over there. They are actually doing an analytics on their aircraft movement at the airport to minimize the cost they can pay to the airport for parking an aircraft at the gate. So they hired people in India to do that analysis to see how quickly you can move an aircraft by the time it comes to the gate and passenger disembark from the aircraft until the time that aircraft can leave the gate. What all activities they can fast forward so that they have to pay minimum charges to the airport for parking at the gate. And that kind of work is very exciting, is very new for us. But when I ask them what kind of skills they are looking, they say, obviously we are hiring engineers and accountant both, because we need an accounting mindset as well as an engineering mindset. But one thing which we require from people is to have an analytical mindset, to quickly think through how do we move this aircraft from one gate to another gate on another airport, what kind of cost saving you can do, what cost saving can be magnified, what cost savings are significant, whether it is fuel and maintenance cost and others. So I think those kind of work is going to come more and more to India, and we need to be prepared to do that work. And we need to make sure that whether the institute is preparing students for that, or people do the courses at their own, or organization will provide training. But the future is all about analytics and technology.
Right. Thank you. Actually, that was very useful. And a 360-degree approach to pure accounting is what actually is the way forward. Taking a cue from that, let me move on to my dear friend Sushil, who actually I've seen him in action in CPM as well as on technical sessions on technology. And he is, encyclopedia. He beats Wikipedia on technology, and he's actually a dream for any chartered accountant who's actually auditing, because we lack those skill sets, and the blending in our age and time is not automatic. We have to, struggle to blend the technology with the basic accounting skills, which somebody from today's generation can do it seamlessly, probably, and as Sarvesh mentioned. But Sushil, tell me a little bit about what is the correlation specifically with shared services and technology, and of course, what is the impact the shared services are having on the technological advancements actually happening in India? Over to you, Sushil.
Sure. Sumanji, first, thank you for your kind words before I start with the rest of the things. Totally. So now coming to the correlation between shared service center and technology, actually both are closely correlated and also interdependent on each other, right? If we have to understand this, we have to go back in time. Let's say a couple of decades back, say in 1980s, that was the time when the concept of shared service center did not exist. At that time, there were some large organizations who were wanting to look at ways and means to reduce cost, right? And one of the first functions that they picked up to evaluate was accounting function. What they realized was that the accounting departments were decentralized in nature, meaning there were many teams who were catering to various parts of the business, various locations, business units, entities, plants, etc. Right? So they realized that they can actually save cost by combining those services, making it a centralized function, and making sure that the accounting function is actually processing all the transactions, activities, and providing seamless services in a centralized manner to all those various parts of the organization. Now, one of the prerequisites to be able to centralize any function is to make sure that all the various parts of your organization, be it various locations, entities, and other elements of the organization, they have to be on a single IT platform. So that became a prerequisite for the model to succeed. Now, thankfully, around the same time, particularly in the 90s, we also had the advent of the ERP technologies. Now we all know that ERP systems actually do a beautiful work in bringing all the various pieces and elements of an organization together into an integrated IT platform. And that enabled the advent and the growth of the shared service center concept further from there. So in a nutshell, both are closely interrelated to each other. Since the very inception of the shared service centers, both have actually fed on each other and they continue to grow together hand in hand. Now, coming to the second part of your question, Sumanji, on the impact of shared service center on technological development in India. Again, we have to understand it, by looking at what is happening in the present day. So if you look at the shared service center model today, you see 2 or 3 very distinct developments taking place. Number one is the expansion of the scope of services, and both you and Sarvesh both mentioned about some bit of that. So the expansion of services would mean not only the depth of services, but also the width of the services. So from single function, the shared service centers or the global capability centers, they have moved to multiple functions, from catering to just a few entities or few countries, they have moved to catering the entire globe. So globalization. And apart from that, you see a lot of other activities that are happening. So that's the first part. So basically expansion of services. So from some activities to a full life cycle or end-to-end transactions or processes, right? So that's the first part. Second key development that is taking place is the change in the expectation of the stakeholders. So now the stakeholders not only expect cost savings, but they want to go beyond that, right? Like already mentioned earlier. So they want the shared service centers to provide value-added services, services which are more sophisticated in nature, services which are more specialized, more knowledge intensive. So that's the second part of the key development. Third, and even more important, is the technology aspect. So, technology is now become a fundamental aspect of all the process excellence. Now we know that so many organizations are going through some kind of a business transformation. Now, as part of those business transformations, there is a need for increased digitalization. There is a need for even more efficiency and productivity, better customer experience and so on. Now, what is happening is shared service centers are actually becoming a key part of the overall strategy of that business transformation, right? Now, with all these three developments that are taking place in the present scenario, it has brought shared service center to the center of the overall organization's, strategy. So it is not only making shared service centers, excellence hubs, but also now enabling them to in turn drive the technological advancements, particularly in the case of some of the emerging technologies like RPAs or robotic process automation and artificial intelligence. Now, as per a recent Gartner survey, more than 80% of the shared service centers have either implemented RPAs or they are considering to implement it very, very soon. So that shows, how shared service centers are actually contributing to the growth and the development of these kind of technologies, right? Now we know that RPA is a type of a software which can replicate, some of the tasks that a human user would do, right? And let me just give you some of these examples, right? Real life examples. Now we know that any kind of repeatable or standardized or rule-based tasks, can be automated using software bots, right? So take for instance, invoice processing. Now there are many shared service centers which are processing procurement to pay function, and within that, invoice processing is a key activity. Conventionally, invoice processing would be performed by a human user, right? And all the tasks associated with it would be done by a person. Now, it has become very easy now to actually use a software bot to do all of those tasks. So these bots are capable of doing what a human can do. They can log into the system. They can actually look at the invoices that need to be processed. They can look at other data or other documents like the purchase order. They can look at the details around what is the PO rate, what is the amount, etc. They can look at the good receipt, quantity and all from the good receipt document. And they are capable of comparing, analyzing, and determining, to automatically post the invoices. They can even, create an alert to the designated person in case of any exception, right? So that is where we are actually heading. Right? And RPA is not just, it's not an end by any means. It is just the beginning. If the technology has to evolve further, there are things like artificial intelligence, which takes it to the next level. Now, if I use the same example, we know that in the invoice processing, about 30-40% of the invoices typically could be non-purchase order based invoices, meaning there is no purchase order, right? Now there, you can build an AI system in such a way that the AI system will actually predict based on the past data and suggest the general ledger account, for the posting of the invoice. It can also suggest the confidence level that it has regarding the correctness of its own prediction, right? And depending on the configuration, it can post the invoice automatically. Now, the confidence level, again, what it would mean is, whether the prediction in its own data is based on above a threshold or not. Let's say the configuration says anything beyond 98% confidence needs to be posted directly. So then the AI system would post the invoice directly. Anything below it, it can be configured to identify a person to kind of look at it and approve it, right? So this AI-based system can look at past data. It can, it uses machine algorithms to create a predictive analysis and generate a lot of new insights, in the shared service center space. So, in a nutshell, if you look at what is happening today, these shared service centers or global capability centers, right, are a perfect breeding ground for newer technologies, emerging technologies like RPA and artificial intelligence. And therefore, they are significantly contributing towards the growth of these newer technologies in India.
Thank you. That was very, actually, on one breath, little scary, a sci-fi for people who are on the peripheral of this whole game. And for, some and a large number of young brothers and sisters, it's the most exciting time to actually ride the cusp of technology with accounting. What a beautiful blend it can be. And, when we go into the marketplace for opportunities or to upskill ourselves, we find that the opportunities open up into myriad of, areas, and not only restrict to the core accounting or assurance function. Actually, moving to the 360-degree review of how actually this is working for us as a country, I would jump to Abhishek ji, because he has that 360-degree bird's eye view of the economy. He's had different roles, wears different hats. Now he's an entrepreneur on his own right, and also working with younger generation, which is actually the pulse of the economy, and the future actually is what he is linked to. So Abhijekshi, tell me, what do you feel shared service centers are contributing, and how are they actually contributing for the vision of the Atmanirbhar Bharat? How is that being molded by this GCC or shared services business in India?
Well, thank you, Sumanji, for this interesting question about Atmanirbhar Bharat Before I really address the question about how shared services are contributing to the Atmanirbhar Bharat, I would like to kind of talk about the construct of Atmanirbhar Bharat, just for the better understanding of the audience in terms of how Atmanirbhar Bharat is being structured and what is the construct around it. So Atmanirbhar Bharat Abhiyan is the vision of the Prime Minister of India with a kind of a view to kind of make India a self-reliant country. And when this mission was being launched, the mission is to kind of make India a bigger and a better global economy. The objective of Atmanirbhar is not to kind of make India a self-contained or predominantly kind of making India very much specific to the internal supplies and internal growth. It is more about how India as a country can become more globally competitive and how we can kind of go global in the market. So today, if we look into the overall construct, India is definitely a kind of a global market. The world, we have already reached out to the entire world in one form or the other. And we are kind of expanding our frontiers from the position of the strength what we have kind of created in the shared services centers. Now, kind of talking about the shared services centers, I think it's been very well covered by you, Sumanji, Sarvesh, and Sushil in terms of the different parameters, whether it is economy, whether it is employment or technology. I think the shared services centers aligns very well with the principles of self-sustainability and self-generation. When we talk about self-sustainability and self-generation, what I mean to kind of say over here is that the model is being proved internationally, where we have kind of been working with the international MNCs and clients for almost like 2 decades or 3 decades, started with the NIT space, kind of going into all different domains and fields. And the self-generation is going to kind of come from the available untapped share of business within India. So I think within India also we need to kind of figure out how well we can kind of keep on tapping the opportunities which are available. If we look into the Fortune 100 companies, I think 85% of the Fortune 100 companies have been utilizing global shared services, not only in terms of cost reduction, but in terms of capability enhancement and in terms of the business transformation. Shared services, I think, have kind of evolved a lot. They're becoming more global, more complex. We talked about that there has been a complete transformation. There has been a paradigm shift. That earlier the shared services were being visualized as the centers to reduce cost or increase efficiency. But now they're becoming more capability centers to kind of run programs like analytics, reporting, digital capabilities, and enhancing the overall customer experience. So I think Sushilji kind of covered out very well the key enablers for these things are RPAs, automation, global standard processes, and in terms of how we can kind of bring the cloud implementation, how we can bring the single instance ERP, which is a new thing which is coming out very aggressively out in the market. So taking all these things about how the Atmanirbhar Bharat construct is there and how shared services centers have kind of evolved in the last few years, I would like to kind of bring the attention about the 5 pillars of Atmanirbhar Bharat. The 5 pillars of Atmanirbhar Bharat talks about the economy, it talks about infrastructure, it talks about the systems, demography, and the demand. And now I would like to kind of really see and put across that how shared service centers have really addressed each of these pillars and how we have manifested from the shared service centers to kind of address the vision of the Prime Minister and the vision of the entire mission of this Atmanirbhar Bharat Abhiyan. So when we talk about economy, as per Atmanirbhar Bharat, it says that we want to look for quantum jumps. We are not looking for incremental changes. So when we talk about quantum jumps, I think Sumanji covered out very well in terms of the kind of a contribution which the shared service centers have made to the economy in terms of the total number of people who are being employed, whether it is 1.3 million, being contributing to 33.4 billion in terms of revenue. But interestingly, again, I was also kind of going through a similar report, Sumanji from NASSCOM, and they have categorically laid out that though this contribution of $33.4 billion is almost equivalent to the 1.2% of the GDP of India, and which is a huge contribution, like the way people don't even understand the contribution which is coming from the SSCs. But the future is significantly bright, and the estimate is that by 2025, the total revenue which will come from the shared service centers is going to be in the neighborhood of about 60 to 80 billion dollars, which is almost like 2.5 times from where we are at this point of time within the next 4 to 5 years. The other interesting thing which shared services center is kind of contributing to economy, apart from numbers and employment and all, is driving the agenda of the diversity. When we kind of talk about diversity now, almost 70 to 80% of shared service centers have been focusing to build up their leadership team with at least 1/3 of the composition of that leadership team coming from the minorities and the women section. So I think this is again one of the most important contribution which will come and support the overall development of different sections of the economy. Moving to the second pillar of Atmanirbhar Bharat, which is about the infrastructure and technology driven. So the vision says that we want to kind of build a world-class infrastructure. And when it comes to technology, we want to kind of have India as a representative of the 21st century. So recently there was a statement which came out from PM Modi, where he said that Digital India is the instrument for Atmanirbhar Bharat. And this is being very well addressed by the shared service centers, wherein the last 2 decades, we have seen that the entire focus of the shared service centers have kind of slowly and gradually shifting from the core basic things to kind of really scale up and speed up the overall setup of the digital infrastructure. And that is the whole reason why we have seen that digital transformation has become the core strategic agenda for each and every shared service center. And Sushilji kind of highlighted it very well that almost 80% of the shared service centers are kind of heading towards the direction where they have already implemented RPS or they're in position to kind of implement RPS. 50% plus shared service centers have already implemented single instance ERP. And similarly, about 50 to 53% shared service centers have already kind of moved into the cloud-based technology. So the kind of a transformation or the contribution which the shared service centers have given and kind of showcased India on the global map in terms of how digital we are as a country and how strong we are in terms of our infrastructure kind of addresses very well the 2 pillars about infrastructure and the systems what the India is kind of trying to build up. The fourth and the most interesting pillar is the demography, and I think this has been one of the strengths of India as a country, wherein we have been considered as one of the youngest countries in the world. And considering that we are one of the youngest countries of the world, one of the statistics which is very interesting is that 65% of our population is less than 35 years of age. And a country which has got 65% of their population which is less than 35 years of age, and in 2018, our working age population was more than our dependent age population. So if we look into these 2 interesting statistics, and if we look into the shared service centers or the GCCs, where the employment opportunities are being generated in huge numbers, and those opportunities gets generated right from the age of 19 to 20 to kind of goes up to the higher ages. But this is an ideal platform for our youth to kind of get and amalgamated into the shared service centers and kind of contribute on the demographic front. The 5th pillar, which is again a very interesting pillar which comes out, is about demand. And the demand is not about that we need to kind of generate the demand, but it is also about how optimally we are utilizing both demand and supply when we are talking about the overall growth of the country. India is being still positioned as #1 preferred location for shared service center across the globe. And interestingly, we share almost 20% of the global landscape when it comes to shared service centers. So 20% of the share is of India when it comes to shared service centers. Sarvesh covered out very well that Philippines is kind of coming up, so do other locations, whether it is Poland, Costa Rica, and so many different countries are coming up with their own shared service centers. But interestingly, still nobody has been able to kind of surpass India. And there have been kind of 3 major reasons for that. One is the financial attractiveness, specifically the cost side. The second is the overall talent pool, whether it comes in skill or whether it comes in terms of the availability of the talent. And the third is the overall business environment, the kind of a business environment which the government is also kind of supporting in the last few years, to really encourage the shared service centers has been kind of quite encouraging. So I think looking into these statistics, this is quite interesting for us to kind of see that how the overall demand side is kind of in favor of India. However, there is still a huge scope for us to kind of provide the support services, the outsourcing services to our domestic users. Because once the shared service center comes to our mind, or GCCs comes to our mind, the first thing that catches us is that it is for the international market. But of late, in the last few years, there has been a dramatic shift, and now a lot of Indian companies, a lot of Indian conglomerates have started using this kind of an opportunity where they are either setting up their own shared service centers or kind of utilizing a lot of outsourcing opportunities which have already been created in the country. So this is where we see that there is a huge opportunity for us to kind of get a lot of demand in the market. In terms of supply, there has been initially it all started with IT engineers 20 years back. In last 10 years, there have been a significant boom for our members, chartered accountants, where we have seen a lot of opportunities by having these different shared service centers coming up in the country. The real challenge, and I think this was one of the things which I was hearing as part of Sarvesh's thought, is that we are still struggling to kind of get a lot of talent to kind of get hired or to kind of get that kind of an opportunity, and it's always a shortage. But I think we as a country have to kind of really understand and realize that do we need to kind of stick ourselves to the tier 1 cities, or do we need to kind of go to the next level of cities, which is the smaller towns, tier 3 cities, or even for that matter to the rural India, and see how well we can kind of culminate the talent from there and kind of increase or poise this entire supply chain requirement, which is required for us to kind of keep on running the shared service centers successfully. And that is where, specifically after COVID, now since the situation is where the people have started realizing to work from home, it's all new normal and all. 70% plus shared service centers are now going for hiring, which is location agnostic. So they don't care from where the person is joining and from where the person is operating. And they're also kind of building up this entire hybrid model. So by having this kind of a collaboration, I think it will kind of really boost up the overall supply to the shared service centers, specifically coming from the smaller towns or in the rural areas. And I think these are the 5 pillars, and which I as a person believe that have been significantly contributed by shared service centers, has been not being known out to the world very well. But with these new emerging disruptive technologies and the overall seasonality and which service providers brings, the experience which service providers brings, whether it is Infosys, Accenture, Big Four, and other organizations, the world-class IT infrastructure, what we have set it up, and close to nil learning curve, because practically India has reached to a position where our shared service centers learning curve has become minimal. And some of the regulatory changes, I think India will see a higher trajectory of growth in shared service centers in the coming decade. And to kind of conclude my thoughts, Sumanji, I can be bold enough to say that shared service centers can carries a potential to be a poster child of Atmanirbhar Bharat.
Thank you. That was brilliant, Abhishekji, and the succinct way you had elaborated, and you have elaborated on the 5 pillars. But a very interesting thought came across when you were touching upon, the work from home, but the very fact that, as we've all grown up and, heard Gandhiji's statement that the soul of India lives in the villages. This was back in the last century, beginning of the last century. And now possibly we can stretch that to smaller towns and smaller, locations and clusters. What is the advantages in smaller towns and how it can actually contribute, albeit the work from home agnostic situation with the shared services centers are working on? Can you elaborate on that? Do you have any exposure on that aspect, Abhishek?
I think, Sumanji, I got an opportunity a few weeks back to talk about this topic as part of the webinar, and interestingly, you picked up the exactly same question. About how the shared service centers in the smaller towns or in the rural areas can contribute to the entire upliftment of the economy and kind of contribute on this. So I think it can definitely contribute to the entire ethos of Atmanirbhar Bharat, considering that I'm talking on Atmanirbhar Bharat, so I would like to kind of correlate it with that. By really bringing a force multiplier for the global prosperity, because that is where your majority of the force lies. And to kind of share some insights around that and probably some very, very interesting statistics, which I was kind of going through when I picked this up earlier, that 72% of our population lives in rural India. And about 60% of our population is literate, which is a very interesting fact that the 72% is in rural India, out of that 60% is literate and trainable. So it's not only that they are literate, but they are trainable. And interestingly, in the last 10 years, there has been some gradual shift of the BPOs which have started setting up their centers in rural India. I'll pick up a classic example, Uttarakhand. Uttarakhand, majority of the demographic positioning of Uttarakhand is hills. And 86% of the entire coverage of Uttarakhand is on hills. In those areas, now IT companies have started setting up their BPOs where they're kind of hiring people from the rural side or people from the villages, and they are getting them trained, they are kind of teaching them, and they are getting them job ready. So interestingly, 80% is the literacy rate in a region like Uttarakhand, where people would not even understand and realize that there is an opportunity where you can go and set up a center. And just to kind of bring the real advantages, that what are the advantages which we as an economy will get by setting up the centers in the smaller towns or rural India. But before that, I think it is important for us to kind of really understand the entire demographic positioning of the shared service centers. So how I interpret or how I would like to kind of describe is the leaders. When I say leaders, then predominantly the cities which comes to our mind are Hyderabad, Pune, Bangalore, Delhi NCR, and so on, which are considered to be the most preferable locations for setting up the shared service center. And they're still going to be future preference locations, especially for the global shared service center. The followers are the ones which are the emerging centers, like whether it is Chandigarh, Kochi, Trivandrum, and so on, where we have seen a lot of kind of upliftment which has happened in the last few years. But the real dark horses of this country will come from very, very small towns like Madurai, Nashik, Vadodara, and the hills or smaller villages, whether it is from Karnataka or Uttarakhand, and so many different places. So I think this is where the real hunt for the talent is going to be there in the next few years. In terms of advantages for the smaller towns, it is very, very clear. The low cost of infrastructure, the infrastructure cost is fairly low because these towns are now being supported quite heavily by the government incentives and government policies. The cost of talent is significantly cheaper. You get the talent at almost 20-25% at a cheaper rate. The most important aspect is the retention of talent. The talent retention rate is significantly higher in the smaller towns and in the rural areas because of the simple fact that there is a lack of competition and people still want to kind of be in their cities, in their hometowns, and they want to be with their families. So that gives that kind of an advantageous position to kind of have a employment retention. And the last but not the least, the most important aspect which will be served by having these shared service centers in small cities and small towns is addressing another important ambit of government of India, which is the smart city mission. So under the smart city mission, we all know that the government has parked almost $100 billion with an intention to kind of make about 100 odd cities as smart cities. And if we look into the mission statement of smart city, it talks about economic growth. It talks about improving the quality of life of people by the overall area development, and then harnessing technology. And I think in the last almost 60-70 minutes, we have extensively talked about these topics, whether it is economy, whether it is people, or whether it is technology. And if these shared service centers can kind of go and set up their shops in these smaller towns, I think it can be the biggest contributor to the smart city mission of the government.
Thank you. Thank you, Abhishek. Actually, just one also thought which flashed my mind was the advent of 5G, because the connectivity and the satellites now giving broadband, etc., is also going to be game changer. But moving to the granular and the last part, which is really interesting and which will really be very much useful to my young brothers and professional brothers and sisters, is the granular part of this relationship of employment in a SCC or a GCC. Basically, I'll move to Sarvesh for that, because he heads the audit function. What exactly is the finance transformation, and what kind of activities some of the large corporates undertake to change their financial function? How do they actually, can you explain that a little bit so that, we are well versed with how it is actually happening on the ground, Sarvesh?
And you see, with COVID and even before COVID as well, everybody was talking about how to optimize their cost. And in that context, all these large organizations started to talk about they need to do some finance transformation. And I think Sushil talked about the first thing every organization has to do is look at one instance of an ERP. If you're a large organization and if you have 15 different instances of ERP, there is no way you can do a standardization. Because for any economy of scale, first you need to do a standardization, then only you can do automation. So most of the organizations have started to look at what kind of ERP transformation they have to do so that they can get economy of scale and they can transition work to their shared service center to take advantage of standardization and cost as well. The other thing which they're looking is digitization. In my old time of articleship and doing auditing in India, you go to an audit client and says, I need to do a vouching. They will give you a person, and says, this guy will sit with you. He will take out all the binders from the storeroom, show you all the voucher. You put a tick mark on the voucher that you have verified, and then you go back to the storeroom. We are going to be no longer in that. And COVID has proved again, we need to be looking at all the digital documents. We need to be looking at all soft copies. At the same time, it is the duty of the auditors to verify that they are authenticated documents. With these PDF documents, there can be a lot of changes which you can do it. So there is going to be a big transformation of how digitally you can create all your supporting documents, so that not just the auditors, but everybody who is asking for information is having this information available in a digital format. We'll give you our own organization. Auditors are the most orthodox people. In our organization, when we used to submit expenses, you have to submit the hard copy. They will not rely on a scanned copy or a photocopy. But in last 2 years, although the extent of expenses we are submitting has gone down, but in last 2 years, we are all reimbursed based on the scanned copy we have submitted. And I'm sure previously we were told we need the hard copy because the income tax department in India is going to ask for the hard copy. But I'm sure with all these things, income tax will also start to relook at that they can't rely on hard copy when people are not even going to office. So a lot of emphasis on ERP transformation, digital transformation. One other thing which I noticed, I recently traveled to US for personal visit. If we look at in India, we get our COVID certificate or vaccination certificate digitally. And we get it in the app, the Arogya Setu app, and you can open it. And there is a barcode which anybody can scan to authenticate whether it is a genuine certificate or not. You go to US, which is technologically one of the most advanced country. When they are issuing the vaccination certificate, it is like a piece of paper like this, handwritten, hand signed by the person who is giving you the vaccination. So look at the advancement we have. I was looking at my phone. I have an app called DigiLocker. My CA certificate, my license, my car registration, my insurance, all of it is digitally available on that DigiLocker. I don't even need to carry my driving license now. I can just show my phone and you can do it. Look at the car. The MG Hector has come up with this new car, which is going to be launched very soon. You will have a Bluetooth app in that, which you can start your car. So with so much of technology advancement, the finance department is also looking at how do we make sure that we are making it a paperless office. We are making it that if a transaction happen in US now, the person sitting in India or a person sitting in Philippines can look at it real time. He can approve it real time, and the transactions will be processed by ERP. So this is going to be big advantage for companies to move towards centralization and shared services strategy as well. So this is very beneficial for us that all the large organizations are doing it. It is also beneficial for us from business point of view for all the professional services firm, whether in the advisory business, that we are highly involved because the clients are looking for expert and advice from the consulting folks to advise them how best to do this finance transformation, what kind of activity needs to be performed where, what kind of changes in the ERP systems they need to bring in so that they can gain the benefit of the cost optimization.
Actually, just to cue on that, now we have faceless assessments, one of the key initiatives of the Ministry of Finance. And that, then you are just scanning and uploading those documents. So they may not actually need to, unless they suspect something, to get the hard copy or the original copy.
It has advantage and disadvantage. In the previous way, you can sit in front of somebody and explain to him what you're trying to do.
Now it's not.
Now it is all paperless and you keep on submitting your response, because I'm a victim of that as well. I've been responding 6 times to the income tax department for the notices we have got. And every time it goes to a different person. It is not going to the same person as well.
Well, that's bad luck, but possibly that could be the aberration, but it'll settle down, I'm sure. Yeah. But one thing, it's a little blurred in my mind, and I think this can, Sushilji can address this. Basically, you see, we have the IT and ITES industry, and typically it's a no-no for chartered accountants, at least the vast majority of them, because you need a BTech and IITs and all that. But typically, there's some balance of blurring which is happening. And tell me, especially in this ITES industry, what are the typical services that qualify for SEC? And, how they can, if I'm armed with a CA degree, how it gives me that further fill-up? Sushilji.
Yeah, so if you look at IT and ITES industry, one of the first basic services which the ITES industry started with in the shared service model were the software development and maintenance, right? And it goes back to the days when companies like Infosys were set up, right? Which was primarily based on software development, maintenance. Then second is the infrastructure maintenance. This is all about the servers, the hardware, all the hardware, right? Servers, your laptops, desktops, routers, firewalls, all of that. So the maintenance of that. So there are many organizations which have now put all these kind of services into a shared service model, either outsourced or in a captive center, right? Then if you go beyond, there are, services like incident management or help desk management, right? Now, this is something that we as individuals would be coming across more often. Let's say you need some help on your laptop, something has broken down or you have a software issue. The first thing you would do is call a help desk, right? And get the issue sorted. So that entire help desk management, problem management, that is something that, is I think in most of the organization now it is in a shared service model. Now, if we move beyond that, there are in fact some newer areas within the IT industry where we are seeing more and more traction. Take, for instance, information security related services. Now, there are IT companies who are actually getting into that space as well, right? Providing security incident management related services. They are in fact setting up and, monitoring incidents through the security operation centers, right? And that can again be run in a shared service model where they can actually monitor security for multiple clients at a time. Mm-hmm. Along with that, there are two related concepts which are again coming up. These are called PaaS or SaaS. PaaS is nothing but product as a service, and SaaS is software as a service. So what we are seeing now is the emergence of a proposition, by various IT companies and in fact startups as well, where they have developed very good products or softwares, and they are bundling those products or softwares with the underlying services. A common example is a ticketing tool, right? Where an IT company or a startup would develop a beautiful ticketing tool, and they would also offer to manage the entire help desk or incident management process for the client. Another example and I'm going beyond the ITS industry. Take for instance, HR, right? I have a client who has developed the entire HR and payroll system. So they have an app for anything and everything, including appraisal, the employee engagement management, recruitment, onboarding, everything, right? So now they have, again, they've started bundling these products or services, these products or softwares along with the underlying services. And this kind of bundling is actually appealing to most of their customers. Now, the key to understand here is that the organizations are already sold on the concept of shared service center. So, it's a given. Now, if somebody comes with a value proposition where somebody is bringing a product and the services together, it makes that much more sense and it makes that much more appealing. So that is what is happening in the ITS world right now.
No, that's actually very interesting to know. And you did touch upon one thing on the startups. So, and India, has a good startup ecosystem now, and it is actually thriving and also continues to do so. Tell me, Sushil ji, what impact, if any, actually do you see in the startup space because of this shared services growth?
Again, the impact, just like it has had on the technology, the impact on the startup ecosystem is also very, very positive, right? So, I talked about the software as a service and product as a service, right? Now, one of the most important developments that we see in the startup world is all the new products and, all the new softwares that the startups are coming up with, right? And the concept of the shared service center is actually helping them to make that proposition where they can go to the largest companies of the world, even when they are very small in size, right? They can go and they can pitch for their services, right? And if I look around and see what is happening with some of my clients who are in the startup space, I can see a lot of traction, right? Very, very soon, they are actually able to kind of scale up, right? And their clientele, which yesterday or in the last year would have only very few or, medium-sized companies, within a span of 1 or 2 years, you would see that, they would boast of some of the largest organizations as their customers. So the scaling is happening very, very rapidly because of the entire shared service center and global capability center model that we are seeing. So actually, just like technology, even the startup ecosystem is moving hand in hand in some way or sorts, along with the shared service model and global capability center model.
No, thank you. Thank you, Sushil, for that. I think that is very useful. Actually, coming to the last bit of this, webinar and program, and then of course we have some time for Q&A. I just wanted, one piece to be cleared from my perspective, and that probably Abhishek ji can help from the Atmanirbhar Bharat standpoint. Because what, just the last mile link, because Atmanirbhar actually stands on two major principles, basically scale and standard. So Abhishek ji, can you touch upon briefly, how do you think as shared services centers are addressing and contributing to these principles at present?
Yes, Sumanji, I think you're absolutely right that Atmanirbhar Bharat is resting on two twin principles, which is the entire scale and the standard. And when we kind of talk about scale and standard, it is about both quantity and quality. India is definitely a powerhouse of skill and talent when we kind of look into India as a country, and that kind of position or that poise the country to really scale up its services from where we are and to kind of provide services with the right quality. And I think in this journey of this entire conversation on the webinar, we talked about multiple instances, multiple scenarios where we have evolved as a country, not from doing the basic jobs, but kind of evolving ourselves into much more complexities. And it is not only in the fields of IT and the finance, But interestingly, a lot of shared services centers have opened up in the fields of medical as well. Now the reports interpretation, whether it is CT scans or MRIs, are being done over here, being sent across. The entire interpretation is being done, and the treatment is being designed in India, and then eventually it is being conducted in different markets. So I think the complexities with which we are kind of addressing these things are very different. And interestingly, when we deliver services from India to outside market, we not only aim in fulfilling the global demand, but we also kind of our main objective is to kind of get the global acceptance, and it's all being kind of driven through our people's ability and the way India is being positioned, whether through our government and kind of building up the overall credibility in the market. I think we are getting that kind of an acceptability in the market. In terms of, I think the most interesting thing which probably has happened specifically for shared service centers in the last 2 years is that because of this unfortunate pandemic, the entire focus has been shifted to digital and technology adoption. And the amalgamation of digital technology with the skill and scale what India has in terms of people, I think that actually position us to brand ourselves as the global shared services. And when we say global shared services, it also kind of gives us an opportunity to position ourselves to be both a volume and a value creator. And if we kind of combine all these things, whether with the regulatory incentives, the tax benefits, or the transfer pricing policies, it will definitely help us to drive and draw many more shared service centers in the near coming future. And I think this is how the shared service centers have been addressing both the scale and the standard requirements of the global. But interestingly, I would also like to kind of bring one element is about the regional shared service centers. I think this is one thing where probably we as a country have not kind of focused so heavily in the last couple of decades. And there is an interesting statistics which I was going through. It says that the domestic BPO market contribution is about 0.16 to the India's GDP. Wherein if we look into the global BPO contribution, global revenue, BPO revenue contribution, it is almost 0.26 to the global GDP. But now there has been a kind of a steady pace which has been picked up in the last few years, more from a demand perspective in terms of how the shared service centers can kind of serve the Indian industries and different verticals. So traditionally, when we talk about the shared service centers, they were majorly being used by insurance companies, banking companies, telecom companies, more of voice-based support centers in form of BPOs. But there has been a kind of a paradigm shift in terms of how the usability has kind of come across and where the real opportunity lies. For me, the biggest example or the interesting thing which comes out is that our government has become the biggest user of the shared service center. Interestingly, the government was always being kind of, whether it was any government, was always being seen as under pressure when it comes to timeliness of responses, reliability, under fiscal pressures, talent availability, and so on. But now, in the last few years, government has significantly started outsourcing some of their key activities and kind of started using shared service centers. Classic example is Passport Seva Kendra, which is being outsourced by the External Affairs Ministry. I remember that about 10 years back when we used to kind of go and get the passport, it used to be an affair where you have to kind of get an agent first, figure out how much the agent has to kind of get, and then it will still be a story for months. And now if you go to that center, it is just a couple of hours interaction. And I think within 3 to 4 days, you get your passport if you're in a Tatkal Seva. So I think these are the things where the government has also kind of started focusing in uplifting the entire services which they want to kind of provide to citizens of the country. And I think this is kind of significantly going to be a bigger shift if government is going to kind of be the user of the shared service centers. And there has been a lot of opportunities, whether in rural India, whether in form of different technologies which needs to be adopted by industries. Another example which comes to my mind is about the the entire connectivity which the government is trying to kind of do across Gram Panchayat. So there are about 2.5 lakh Gram Panchayats which the government is trying to kind of get it connected through optical fiber. So if that entire demonstration needs to be done, it cannot be done by one single organization or by one single entity. It has to be done by multiple entities and by multiple service providers, whether it is from an IT perspective, whether it is from a technology perspective, and so on. So even there has been a lot of opportunities in the rural areas, and there have been multiple scenarios. Mobile banking is kind of coming up big time in India in terms of how we can kind of do cashless banking, how we can kind of do all. And when we kind of get into these scenarios, then again shared service centers comes into play, whether through mobile networks, whether through banking networks, whether through IT networks, and the way the entire networking is happening between different shared service centers is going to be the way forward. Earlier, there was a shared service center which was specialized in one domain, but now if a client needs to provide a customer experience or a valuable customer experience, they might need to kind of really see that how well they are using the network of the shared service centers, whether it is an IT shared service center, whether it is a banking shared service center, whether it is a telecom shared service center, and how effectively they are being utilized. So I think there has been a significant upliftment in terms of these avenues in terms to scale up the entire demand side, and similarly in terms of how we are providing standardized quality across domains.
Right. No, thank you very much. And, one actually aspect which somehow I missed out and I should have addressed this earlier, and maybe Sarveshji can address this. There is this gnawing fear, and it's been with me at some point of time, not anymore though, but, to a large number of people, with increase in automation, centralization, will this reduce the number of potential job opportunities in future and for us as well? Ultimately, when everything is RPA and single ERP, etc., and machine learning and AI. Sarveshji.
I think at least for the CA members, there is absolutely no impact of automation in AI.
Oh, okay. That's a good news.
We are here for our judgment and estimates and other kind of decision which we can make, because we have got a lot of academic knowledge which is required for making those decisions. So I don't see any impact of AI into our profession, at least for next 5 to 10 years. Now, AI is also going to evolve. We see even in medical professions, AI is evolving quite significantly. So 10 years down the line, maybe there can be some impact, but not necessarily in next 10 years.
No, good. That's very reassuring. And Anilji, if there are any questions, we can address them. But personally, I think, I have learned a lot today. I've understood a lot more in terms of what shared services is actually contributing to our economy, to me personally as a citizen, to the country at large, to our CA fraternity, to various stakeholders and the indirect and the induced employment and opportunities, as well as the recognition India which carries globally. It's been a big shift from just being call centers and BPOs to what we are today, and more so, what can we be tomorrow? Because of the phenomenal, trait in our Indians of hard work and always giving a little extra mile than what is normally required. We don't work by the clock, and some of the Western countries actually do that. People there. So that plus, our immediate response and our kind of gnawing thing कि ये मुझे करना है and it is my responsibility. Most of us are in that bracket. And also the fill up which the government is giving and the excitement it is generating is creating that momentum. And of course, how globally is actually being positioned, and the technology aspect is overwhelmingly taking over the whole world in its ambit. I think this is one of the most exciting opportunities, and we are at actually a cusp of a revolution, which could be even larger than the industrial revolution we talked about and all of us read in history, which has changed the course of the organization, and India is actually riding this in the forefront. It is the horses of the Indian driving force in this GCC or Shared Services Center, which is actually leading this transformation right across all the various aspects, whether it's technology, human resources, regional development, city center, exports, employment, contribution to the exchequer, what have you. And for chartered accountants, it's opened up a vista of opportunities, which was hitherto never there for us. It'll give me the finesse, the polish it brings to me with interacting with overseas clients or my counterparts or my colleagues. It changes my entire dimension. My confidence levels increases significantly. My employability and my, the jump I can proceed in my career, and also the confidence to take on newer learnings and newer, the push to go towards technology, do something even after 15, 20 to 25 years of actually working as a chartered accountant, to take on some machine learning activity or some other courses which are available online. Of course, an institute is actually going to be providing, and I see a lot of mails talking about that. Data analytics, technology, everything is happening on ground. We just need to be clued in and also realize that this is my passport to something very great. And I thank each one of you to have taken out your valuable time, and and also all the participants who have been with us and who have continued up to this 2 hours. And I hope it's been an enriching experience and an eye-opener, which is for me. And of course, now I hand over to Anilji to take on the last.
Sir, there are 2-3 questions also, sir.
आप पढ़ दीजिए.
जी. So there is one question. What will be the impact of the new labor codes on the cost of running shared service centers in India?
Anybody who wants to take that on the panel, sir?
Labor codes on the cost of running shared service centers in India.
Sarvesh, you want to address that?
I know there was some law which was enacted in Haryana in terms of how many people you can hire in a particular compensation grade. And many organizations are working with government. That is the only one I'm aware of.
This is not this, sir. This is actually, there's a new labor code which defines how much PF, basic you can give, the threshold limits, they are rewriting the old archive, labor laws, which were probably set in decades ago. So that's been in a lot of debate. And personally, I think, Anilji, to be honest, to be giving you an answer, which I not as an expert, but it's not going to make any significant change for many reasons, because we realign our pay packages, we reinvent ourselves very well. We design ourselves to be resilient, and in their resilience, we can move forward. There could be temporary adjustments and issues for corporates as well as the employees, but I don't think it will have an impact. In fact, it could have a positive impact if it can standardize across different states, different minimum wages, etc., because these shared services centers are providing far greater value than looking into these employment contracts, which may affect the factory workers or some other industry much more significantly.
Ji sir. So there is another question. They are asking about the BPO. Normally, BPO jobs are not liked by young chartered accountants. Even if we are able to recruit, it is very difficult to retain them. So how do we make it more attractive?
Abhishek ji, you want to look into this?
Yeah, I can take this up. I think yes. This is something which probably used to be a kind of challenge about 5 to 6 years back, as when the shared service centers came up into play. There was an extensive hiring which used to be done for chartered accountants, and about 5 to 10 years back, the level of the work was definitely not very complex. It was very basic, low level, and at that point of time, yes, it was a kind of real barrier for chartered accountants to kind of make their profession out of these organizations and to kind of be professionally satisfied. But like the way I think we have discussed in the last 2 hours, the last 3 to 4 years have been kind of a complete transformational years for the entire industry, whether it is shared service centers or BPO, wherein the expectation is not that a chartered accountant brings their academic knowledge, whether it is accountancy, auditing, or taxation, But on the other side, that these centers are providing the opportunities to kind of get them tech savvy and to kind of get them future ready. I think for me, rather, it is becoming a bigger opportunity nowadays if you compare it against the traditional industries where you are still being going to kind of go and work more on the accounting side and finance side. But over here, you will be blended with their academic knowledge will be blended with the entire technological knowledge, whether it is RPAs, automation, or analytics, and so on. So, and that's the whole reason why there has been a significant now an attraction, what we are seeing for chartered accountants to kind of look out for these international or shared service centers.
Actually, taking a clue from there, Abhishek, I think actually it's some steps we have to take the first steps and realize that this is a whole new world. It's actually an Alice in Wonderland experience where everything opens up, and having understood from the discussions and from the stalwarts and the dons of the industry of the panelists today, that it actually opens up a whole new world, and BPO in the traditional sense has been left far behind. So we just have to take that first step, start by starting and realize what are the potentials available and the opportunities to grow professionally, personally, as well as the recognition of doing something very, very effective and useful for myself, as well as for my economy, as well as for my organization.
And even Sumanji, I think I would like to add one thing. Even if we talk about the traditional BPO industry or process-based industries, everyone is kind of getting into transformation mindset, whether it is business transformation or so on. Even within the existing processes, the new thing which is coming up is transformation. So if any of our team, if any of our colleagues or members are working in that industry, I think they should take that opportunity to be part of this transformational journey and get the maximum out of it, so that at least in the next 2 to 3 years, they themselves start seeing themselves into a different world altogether.
It's a breakout time for all of us. Yeah, Anilji, over to you.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Abhishekji, Sumanji. There's another question for a newly qualified chartered accountant. He's asking, I am very keen to open a shared service work. What are the prerequisites to open a shared service center? How to procure clients for this SS work?
Should I take this up? I'm
the newest one in the board.
Yes, Abhishek.
Yeah, I think that's a brilliant question. I would. It's a humble suggestion to my dear friend who has asked this question. If you are absolutely a freshly newly qualified chartered accountant, my suggestion is that get some experience behind you. Work with an existing, an established shared service center, where you get to kind of understand the entire functioning of the center, right from operations to technology to people to infrastructure and so on. And once you get enough experience behind you, at least 4 to 5 years, and that is the time when you can kind of also work on your networking in the market, whether in the international market or the domestic market. I think by that time, one should really think about getting into any kind of their own setup, at least get some experience behind themselves. And this is exactly the same way like any of the startups happen. So if we look into any of the IITians or IIM people, they work with a particular industry for 3 to 4 years and then they go for their own startup. So my humble suggestion is on that piece. But yes, I've also given you the ingredients or the recipe to set up the shared service center by getting the following ticks in place. And I think you will be up and ready to run it for yourself.
Excellent.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. There's one question relating to technology. He's asking about the small towns still have a lot of challenges in terms of IT infrastructure, such as seamless, less connectivity also. So what strategic steps are taken to resolve this challenge?
Sushilji, can you address that for me?
Yeah, sure. So, Sumantji, you mentioned about 5G, right? I think that is one of the technologies which is expected to radically change this issue, right? With 5G, the day it comes to the small towns and remote corners of the country, I think that will solve this problem. And we can just hope that till that time, I'm just hoping that it will happen soon, but till that time, better infrastructure and bandwidth is something that we can only hope for, right? And why small cities and towns? I would say sometimes even all of us in bigger cities struggle with it. So yes, that is a known issue. But I think with the advent of technology and with 5G, it is expected to solve a lot of similar problems for us.
And to add to that, the satellites which are being, flying all across the, the atmosphere, Microsoft initiative for beaming in broadband services without any cable or, local support is also going to be game changer for remote areas as well.
And I think just to add on, currently the centers which are operating in rural areas, so they are working on dual platforms. One is the last mile optical fiber, like the way the government is already kind of working on that piece. The second is the wireless, the last mile wireless technology, the radio frequency. I think those are the things which these centers have started utilizing to kind of really have the dual support on the bandwidth perspective.
Just to add, I mean, taking it in a lighter spirit, I can just recall the day when I had to check my CA result, right? That incidentally happened online. And those were the days when the technology was very rudimentary, right? So just to do that, it took so much time for me, right? I think we have come a long way from that kind of a situation, right? It needs to get better. Probably the way the technology is advancing at present, maybe in next couple of years, we will see a radical change, even on that front. Yeah,
I'm sure about that. Right.
So one question is, any pathway to make a career in big data analytics?
That's Sushilji's question, actually.
Yes.
Sorry, could you please repeat that question?
So the question is,
the pathway for big data analytics, big data analytics. What is the pathway for me as a CA to get into that line?
Yes.
Yeah, so there are some newer softwares which are helping in data analytics, right? So you have softwares like UiPath. UiPath is for RPA. You have softwares like UiPath, and then there are many other in the market which are providing advanced level of analytics, right? So the best thing would be for us to look at courses which can help us upskilling in the data analytics space. I would also recommend to look at programs, which institute is offering. Sumantji mentioned about a lot of initiatives that ICAI is already taking. So, if you search on the website, I'm sure you will find a number of programs which will help you upskill on data analytics as well. So that is what I would recommend.
Thank you.
So another question, is there any network which can provide offshore opportunity for freelance from India in the field of SOX and ITGC?
In fact, EY has started something called Gig Now, where there is a platform where the freelancers can register themselves, can tell us what skills they have, and then we will employ them on a contract basis.
That, and again, just to add, again, I would recommend whoever wants to upskill on ITGCs, SOX, etc. There are some good courses that our institute is offering, right? Including courses on ERP systems like SAP and Oracle. I would recommend all of you to make use of that as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So at the end, it's now close the session. It was a wonderful experience, complete 2 hours, and all the panelists, all the eminent speakers have deliberated and all are here since last 2 hours. It was a very wonderful experience and very knowledgeable deliberation. And each one of you have given their expert comments on the various core topics which we have chosen for this today: Atmanirbhar Bharat, economy, employment, and technology. So on behalf of Committee for Members in Practice of Institute of Chartered Accountants of India, I extend my heartiest thanks for all the 4 speakers for sparing their valuable time and enlightening all of us on various intricacies and sharing their expert opinion on this shared service center. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.